Good evening, everyone in Australia and indeed around the world, as there's going to be a lot of people watching this interview tonight. Welcome to this special presentation from Club Grubbery. Hi, John.
G'day, Hoodie. Fantastic to be here.
It is. It's great. We are conducting a program around research that was carried out by Dr David Speicher from Canada, who will be joining us very shortly. And that research, of course, is being pivotal in the actions being taken by the Port Hedland Shire Council to stop mRNA vaccinations in that shire. And documentation has been sent to every shire councillor around Australia to inform them of the reasons why, based on extensive research. And to back that research up tonight, we have a very special panel of guests. Our panel this evening consists firstly of Professor Angus Dalgleish from the UK. Angus, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
We also have Professor Paul Marik from the USA, from Virginia. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Hoodie. Thanks for inviting me.
It's great to have you on. And of course, one of our regular panelists, Dr Philip Altman here in Australia. Welcome, Philip.
Hi, Graham. Hi, John.
Dr David Speicher will be on soon and we'll do an introduction for him. We've had a couple of technical issues, but they're being resolved. Before we get these panelists to discuss their extensive background and qualifications, I just want to make this brief start to the program and why we're doing it. The revelations made from examination of vials of the mRNA vaccine from Pfizer and Moderna has revealed some startling evidence, and that evidence needs to be clarified. John and I are not doctors, although John is a paramedic with extensive experience, but we are concerned citizens, as are the panelists who are on the show with us here at the moment. The basic question I want to ask any councillor who's going to be watching this, or any lawmaker, or any citizen for that matter, is, if there was a chance that someone was tampering with our DNA, would you like to know about it? And think about the answer to that. I can't imagine any reason why you wouldn't want to know about it. So that's what the Port Hedland initiative is all about. It's about seeking the answers to questions that are begging to be answered. We are seeing a great many strange events happening medically and scientifically around the world, and everything at the moment seems to be pointing to one conclusion. There is enough evidence out there to have any lawmaker, any elected representative to say we must stop and we must gather all the information we can without worrying about covering each other's backsides or whatever. We must examine what it is that's going on. And this panel today is just but the tip of the iceberg of what's going on around the world. So that's the reason for this. We're not condemning anybody. We're just coming straight out and asking some basic questions. And we've got an expert panel to discuss that. Professor Angus Dalgleish, can you tell us, give us a summary of your background for those people who may not have heard of you?
Okay, I'm an emeritus professor of oncology, having been a professor of medical oncology at St George's for well over 30 years. I have been head of a vaccine research institute, particularly for cancer and immunotherapy. I have had many years' experience developing an HIV vaccine with my colleagues Birger Sorensen in Norway. And I have been on numerous scientific advisory boards for big pharma, small pharma, and particularly one for a company specializing in messenger RNA vaccines. Clinically, I have been a consultant in the NHS, specifically with the labels consultant virologist, consultant immunologist, consultant in general medicine, as well as oncology. So I feel I'm very well qualified to comment on issues of COVID, which I got involved with very early on because my colleague Birger Sorensen and our collaboration on HIV vaccines while trying to find a coronavirus vaccine that might possibly work, bearing in mind that none of them have ever worked before, basically noted that the virus had been heavily engineered and therefore had to have escaped from the Wuhan lab. It was the fact that nobody would even discuss this, tried to suppress us, told us it was not in the public interest, immediately alerted me to the fact that something far more sinister was going on here. We at the beginning, very beginning, after finding these inserts showing that the virus had to come from the laboratory, we then forwarded all this to the authorities, the cabinet, all the scientists in the UK, with the additional information that 80% of the spike protein was homologous to human epitopes, and therefore it would be absolutely mad to use this as the vaccine. Again, what's going on? 150 different groups use the spike protein as the vaccine, and the main ones that managed to get it out and commercialize it all use the spike protein, when we had pointed out it was madness to do so, but we were dismissed. Hence my background's important here. I was dismissed by Chris Whitty as an oncologist. What do I know? Well, apparently a hell of a lot than him, because all our predictions have come true. And I'm very annoyed about it because so many people have suffered.
Thank you, Angus. And a video presentation that you recorded was presented to the Port Hedland Shire Council, which definitely turned some heads. And this needs to be examined even more so. It can't be dismissed. So we thank you for coming on. Professor Paul Marik, give us a rundown of your background and qualifications.
Yeah, thank you, Graham. So I'm an intensivist. I was board certified in internal medicine, critical care, nutrition science, and neuroscience until the American Board of Internal Medicine decided to revoke my board certification. I was tenured professor of medicine at Eastern Virginia Medical School until I was no longer able to work. What we did in March of 2020 is we developed protocols for COVID. Hence, I think the people recognize me through our efforts. So we developed the FLCCC in March, April of 2020, and we developed protocols for the hospital treatment of patients, for the prevention of COVID, for the early treatment of COVID. And then more recently, we've developed protocols for the vaccine injured. And so that's been my interest. You know, it's important to recognize, although people that have gaslit these patients, we know the data from the CDC itself, CDC's own VScan data tells us that there are over 18 million vaccine injured patients in the United States of America. 18 million. And these patients have been ignored, have been gaslit. They have no resources. They have no financial support, no medical support. So it's become a catastrophic disaster. And so one of our roles is to provide guidance and protocols to help treat these poor people. The other thing I should just mention is that, you know, there's this mantra, safe and effective. We know that there are at least 1 million excess deaths in the US, presumably related to the vaccine. So we have a catastrophic issue. And what needs to be done is the health authorities and the governments, rather than brushing this under the carpet, need to take this seriously, because this is a serious issue. And so that's what I think your initiative or the Port Hedland initiative is trying to do. We're not saying we have all the answers, but we need independent authorities to look at the data, verify the data, and then make some kind of conclusion, because, you know, millions of patients have been involved. It's our duty as members of this planet to do what we can to help these people.
Thank you, Paul. And I know you've paid a very heavy price for speaking in truth and just speaking in the knowledge that you have. We thank you so much for that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later too. Dr. Philip Altman, you're well known to our audience here in Australia. For those who'll be watching in other parts of the world, give a brief summary of your qualification and background.
Well, I'm a pharmacologist. I did my PhD in drug development at Sydney University here. I joined the pharmaceutical industry early in my career, worked as a staff executive for many companies. After a number of years, I became a consultant, and I consulted for probably more than 50% of the multinationals in the country. I'm skilled at evaluating the quality, safety, and efficacy data that's submitted in support of new drugs. I've been involved in more than 100 clinical trials. I design clinical trials, analyze the results, and so forth. I've interacted with the TGA here in Australia for more than 40 years. I know the regulations. I know the standards that they have to work toward, and I've been very critical as to how they've handled the approval of the COVID vaccines and the reporting of adverse drug reactions post-marketing.
You certainly have, and you've demonstrated that on this program many times, Philip. I want to go back to Paul Marik. Paul, you recently wrote a book, which we have a copy of, and thankfully we do, and we've read it. It's an amazing book, which doesn't seem to me in any way, or my wife who's a nurse, to be controversial in any form, but it was temporarily banned by Amazon, and you were temporarily banned by Amazon. What's the status on that book now?
Yeah, so obviously COVID piqued my interest in the use of repurposed drugs because I think they have an important role. So I discovered that many repurposed drugs have proven biological and clinical efficacy in patients with cancer. So I wrote a book, Cancer Care, the Use of Repurposed Drugs and Metabolic Therapy for the Treatment of Cancer. And so the book has, the first version had over 850 references. Every statement was referenced by peer-reviewed literature. And so it was a scientific treatise, really, on the use of repurposed drugs to treat cancer. And we stratified the drugs according to those that had the most clinical evidence. And then for reasons that just came out of the blue, Amazon decided to ban the book because they said that the information that I provided was misleading and a danger to the public. So then I responded and said, okay, well, give me one example. Give me one example where the information was misleading. And obviously they couldn't. And there was a big outcry in the US. Many people directly complained to Bezos and the management of Amazon for banning the book, because there are many books that Amazon sell that are less scientifically rigorous. And guess what happened? They unbanned the book. So in a way, they've promoted my book because obviously it was a threat to Big Pharma, and they weren't able to substantiate their claims. So the book was reinstated.
Amazing stuff. And it just goes to show the level of censorship that's going on now. And it doesn't matter what you do. Once you're labelled, you're labelled. We are so very pleased to have join us today a man at the centre, whose research is at the centre of everything we're discussing today, Dr. David Speicher. Let me give you a brief background of David. He specialises in infectious diseases, virology, diagnostics, saliva biomarkers, and clinical epidemiology. He has examined several vials of Moderna and Pfizer to find out what's inside them, and his revelations have been outstanding and have rattled the medical and scientific world at the moment. David, it's so good to have you on. Thanks for joining us.
It is so nice to be here and to fight alongside all of you. It's a big team effort, and we're all doing the best that we can. So
Yeah, it's great to have you on, David, and we really appreciate your courage in speaking out the way that you have. And also, we do understand that you have a speech impediment, and of course, that makes your efforts even more courageous. So we do thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. It's a pleasure, an absolute pleasure to listen to what you have to say. And so I guess we need to unpack from the beginning what you were given to examine and what you found.
So so far, I've looked at the 32 vials in Canada, and those are Pfizer and Moderna, monovalent and bivalent, and the boosters. All of those have shown high levels of DNA. The Pfizer's all contain a SV40 sequence of an enhancer and a motor. Based on my work in Canada, Australia sent me 3 vials. One purple top Pfizer, one children's Pfizer, and one Moderna. Now, in our vials in Canada, all of our Pfizers have a CT between 15 and 17. In the Australian vials, it's between a PCR CT of 10 to 12 on both spike and the SV40, and this here works out to about 600 copies per 600,000, 600 billion copies of spike and SV40 per dose. Wow. So it's high. And just think, based on David Dean's 1999 paper, you just need 3 to 10 fragments with a SV40 enhancer in the cell in a non-dividing cell before those DNA fragments move into the nucleus across a nuclear envelope and integrate into the genome.
This is frightening stuff. I mean, you're talking about SV40. I'm not a clinician, but I understand how dangerous that stuff is. Paul Marik.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically, David's told us that the vials, I think these are Pfizer vials, contain SV40, which is a promoter region which integrates within the chromosome. And so the fact that there's an SV40 sequence in the vials of the vaccine is alarming, because it raises the potential for the contents of the vaccine to integrate with our chromosomes. And this is an irreversible event. So the SV40 should not be within the vial, and the consequences can be catastrophic. I don't know, Angus, maybe he knows a lot about SV40. Maybe he wants to weigh in about the presence of SV40 in these vaccines. The fact that there's SV40 in itself is alarming.
Well, very much so. The fact that they found any SV40 alone, I believe, is enough for a vaccine that is basically being used to prevent an infection that kills nobody anymore, should be banned immediately. I mean, that is enough. You don't need to go into all these little pettifogging details the TGA have basically put forward as a smokescreen for their useless incompetence in this. I just think it is unbelievable that they've spent all this time, and anybody with, I want to say, with half a brain can see through this. The SV40 alone is such a major flag that it is totally unacceptable. You don't need to go any further. And my issue with all this, and remember, I have been on the scientific board of the messenger RNA vaccine company. My concern is not with you, not with me, not with anybody else on this, really, and nobody else listening. What my concern is our children and their children, my grandchildren. What on earth is this going to do to their genome? What on earth is it going to do to their chances of getting something horrible in 2 or 3 years' time? I mean, once you start putting in oncogenes, and the other thing we've forgotten, not forgotten, but I mean, it's been shown by several labs that the spike messenger RNA binds to suppressor genes. Well, as I've constantly pointed out, that if you have a mutation in a suppressor gene, the cancer you would have got when you were 70 to 80, you now get 40 to 50. We know all this, BRCA, everything like that, we know it. So why would you allow a vaccine to be given to children who are never going to die of any of these so-called infectious diseases, but you're going to increase their chances of cancer, let alone anything else from the cardiology, neurology, and whatever else is out there. So SV40 to me is a red flag that should halt it immediately, get rid of it. Simple as that.
Wow, this is amazing. David, you've really uncovered something that's turning this whole argument inside out and upside down. Philip Altman, based on what you've heard, what you've read, you've read Rebecca Barnett's articles. You have vast experience working with the TGA, who you always held in high regard. Tell us what you're feeling about what you've heard.
Well, this is very, very disturbing. It must be pointed out that the presence of the SV40 promoter segment in the plasmid DNA, which David has detected in these vials, was actually hidden from the drug regulators in the beginning. That's illegal. That's very disturbing. They've now admitted the SV40 promoter segment is there, and as I understand it, they've recognized the threat that this poses, and they're trying to remove it now in some quarters. Now, given the background of the rise of cancers since the introduction of these injections, you cannot ignore the question: is the presence of this SV40 segment related to the rise of cancers? Now, this is a question that should not be just fobbed off lightly by the TGA, the FDA, or any other drug regulator. This has intergenerational impacts worldwide and must be taken very seriously.
So I'd just like to add to what Philip says. We know from epidemiological data from the USA, from the UK, as well as from Japan, that there's been an exponential increase in the risk of cancer in young people between the ages of 15 and 44, which started in 21, 22, and then went into 23. So there is this alarming signal that needs to be, the causation needs to be determined. You cannot ignore it. And obviously there's a very strong association between the rise of the so-called turbo cancers, which people think is a conspiracy by the anti-vax people, but is a reality. This is a reality. I mean, Angus himself can testify that he's seen cases, and that, this is a serious issue. And as Angus said, if this incorporates into our chromosomes, what about our children and our grandchildren? And as I understand, recent data from McKernan has found the SV40 sequence in tumors that were taken from patients that had cancer. So I think this is a really serious issue. And so what I think we need, as all the panelists have said, we need to put a moratorium on these vaccines, and we need further investigation until we know the truth. It's vital, because the health consequences and the long-term consequences are just so catastrophic.
Yeah, I totally agree.
David, what's the process that's allowed you to make this discovery that's so different to what's being looked at everywhere else?
Well, I think what's big is that most labs won't even touch this. Julie and Kate asked I think 18 Australian labs if they'll test the vials, and they said no, we're not doing this at all. And I'm like, of course, this here needs to be done right, and it needs to be done well. And I'm not afraid to test things. I've lost 5 jobs in the pandemic for saying what is right, doing the right testing, teaching what is actual science of the pandemic, and I'm like, these are the facts. As a scientist, I make good, careful observations, and I test things, and I say these are the facts. I get the vials, I tested by PCR and fluorometry, and these are the results. Like, I'm not gonna cover things up. I'm not going to sugarcoat things. I'm not going to, as the TGA, that they black out all of the data. And I'm like, no, these are the facts.
Unbelievable. And you've lost 5 jobs. Everybody here has suffered as a result of wanting to find out answers. Every one of us have lost something as a result of that. And here it goes again, and it continues. Now, I've got to say, David, I was with Adrian McRae in Perth when all of this was happening, and I see you smile when I mention his name. We were seeing the smear campaign that went on in the media in Australia when that happened. In fact, there was a presenter on radio in 6BR, a man who's much respected in Perth, Gary Adshead, who was pushing misinformation about you. He said that all of your research and all of your background was based on veterinary science and not human science. And we know that that's not abjectly not true. Would you like to speak to that?
So I have reached out to Mr. Ads head, and the ironic thing is that he labeled me as a veterinarian doctor as I work at the University of Wealth with our good colleague Dr. Byron Bridle, and I said to Mr. Ad said twofold. One, I'm a PhD in molecular virology. I ran 2 PCR COVID testing labs in the pandemic, and these are the facts. And he said to that my science has been debunked, and he basically sent me 4 fact checker articles and a YouTube video of our good colleague Mr. Paul Offit, and those I ripped apart in a 4-page thing saying these are the facts. We are lied to based on the biodistribution that it's not a gene therapy, that it's not bioengineered, that it's not modified RNA, and I basically outlined 6 ways in which we have been lied to. I've pushed him 3 times in the past week for a response, and I've heard nothing. He's like, well, I'm busy and we're restructuring, and it's just delays as he doesn't want to or isn't going to rebut the science.
So did he actually apologize or come on air and say that he was wrong about you being a veterinary clinician?
He apologized in writing. I've not yet heard a formal on-air apology. So.
Well, Gary Adshead, I know that you will probably see this, and you did a story with me several years ago about a screw up by the coronary office in Perth relating to the SIDS death of my 3-week-old grandson, and you covered that story extensively, and I found you to be a man of integrity. And I think it would be a great thing, if you haven't done it, Gary, to come out publicly and say that you were wrong. I really do believe you should do that. Paul Marik, the situation regarding the fluorometry and the PCR, tell us how important the fluorometry is in relation to all of this.
Yeah, so I'm not an expert, and so David can help us. It seems like there are 2 different methods that he used to quantify the DNA material, the PCR and the fluorometry. And it seems that, if I understand the issue, is that the PCR picks up bigger pieces, bigger fragments of chromosome, whereas fluoroscopy, and David can check this, picks up all the chromosomal material. And so that's important, because even small pieces of chromosome can incorporate into the DNA. So, obviously this is not my area of expertise. Maybe David could explain the difference between the PCR and fluoroscopy, and why the fluoroscopy is so important.
Sure. So PCR is a specific tool, and it'll tell us is this specific DNA or RNA piece in our sample, and that's it. And based on knowing size and fragments and plasmid size, it'll give a good reliable guess about what is there. The downfall on PCR and this is that if these are all DNA plasmids, which are fragmented with DNAs, a enzyme which breaks down DNA. So if you've got your piece and there's a break in the middle, your PCR can't pick that up, and so it's a underestimating of what's there. The fluorometry takes a dye and puts that onto all of the DNA in the sample, irrespective of size, and that'll label all of it. Now, if there is a large amount of RNA in the sample, a DNA dye will bind to both RNA and DNA. So I used a rain, I first examine it in the vaccine itself, and then I boiled it to open up all of the lipid nanoparticles, expose all of it, and then use the RNAs to degrade all of the RNA in the sample and look just at the DNA. Now it's still in the thousands, even though all of the RNA has been rated to end. And this is for total DNA. Now a small DNA piece, 7 base pairs, can spontaneously integrate as well, if not better than a large piece. And so that's the thing. Now, TGA and Pfizer are basically using two different methods. It's PCR on the DNA in the bulk drug substance, and ometry on the RNA of the final drug and what's given. So it'll overcall all of the RNA, and it'll undercall all of the DNA, and we need the same methods used on both at the same time to basically work out exactly how much is in there. Is that helpful, Paul?
Yes, I think so. So, I mean, your findings are very striking, that it seems like there are billions of pieces of chromosomal DNA in the vials. And this is a worry.
Oh, it's a big worry. The TGA FDA guidelines of 10 nanograms per dose DNA is for DNA vaccines of naked DNA less than 200 base pairs in length, and not for the lipid nanoparticles, which put all of this DNA right into our cells.
Yeah. So, Graham, I think, what David is describing is very disturbing. And so what I think is that, the TGA, the FDA, the whatever healthcare authorities need to find independent labs to do the same technique that he's done to see if he's right or wrong. And, not to cover this up. We really need the answer. The fact that there's SV40 in the vials in itself is worrisome. But the fact that we're finding such high concentrations of, plasmid chromosomes, even if these are small pieces, is very disturbing. And so I think we need the truth. We can't whitewash what he's found, and we need independent labs using his technology and his methods to either prove or disprove what he's found. It's as simple as that. I think, the options or the risks are just so striking.
Gus, I know you might have to leave shortly because you've got time constraints. What's your take on what David's just said? I mean, the Port Hedland stuff really is about stopping the use of mRNA based on this contamination. But you hit the nail on the head earlier. I mean, the disease isn't really killing anyone at the risk-benefit analysis here doesn't stack up. It's a red flag. And I think that's what we're trying to get through to mums and dads, grandparents out there. Listen to these experts. You're now going to inject yourself with these boosters. They're doing nothing. They have done nothing. They're only likely to cause harm. What's your summation of what David just had to say?
Well, what David had to say, and I don't think there is any ifs or buts, we're just arguing about very minor details, is that the quality control of these vaccines is appalling, and it always has been, and it always has been, and it's been virtually impossible to get right. As I said, I sat on the scientific advisory board 7 years ago. I was on it for 5 years. They still couldn't do it, and they regarded themselves as the most expert in the world. And they're spending their resources now suing Pfizer and Moderna for using their patents and wanting recriminations on them. But it was obvious that you can never make this safe. And we were talking about cancer. We weren't talking about a virus infection that now kills nobody. I mean, if you die of COVID now, you are leukemia in intensive care, going to die of something very quickly. It really is nothing. And the idea we're using a vaccine for it is absolutely just literally unbelievable. The fact that they're now rolling out this technology, this is really very, very dark forces. We don't need I ever go so far, you don't need a vaccine for flu, for Christ's sake. I mean, it is one of the biggest cons and farces to roll out the flu vaccines for the last few years. The only people who it's ever benefited are the shareholders and the people who get the contracts to make the useless flu vaccines, which are usually between 3 and 8% efficacious, when all you have to do is boost the vitamin D level in the at-risk population. There are several papers, I counted at least 4, which shows you're better off giving these people vitamin D than these expensive, useless vaccines. But the reason I'm banging on about this is they want to make these messenger RNA too, even though we now know they're incredibly dangerous and they should be banned for everything. If they weren't good enough for cancer patients, how come suddenly are they good for the rest of the world and for giving for children? And I know this in my own hospital. They were actually advertising to give £1,500 to mothers to bring their poor hapless children along for a useless messenger RNA vaccine. I regard that as absolutely criminal. They should be locked up, banged up and everything for that. And I've got to the stage where I'm not mincing my words. It is this bad. What bit do they not understand about this? It is unbelievable. It is like giving children guns in school and then wondering why 1 or 2 of them have been shot. I mean, the damage is inevitable because it's going to go, if children, it's going to be in their genome. SV40, even, when you go down to risks and deaths and things with the vaccine, they talked about, 1 in 700 was appalling. Well, to have SV40 in this. You're not talking 1 in 700. You're talking far, far worse than that. 1 in 70, that sort of figure. It's totally unacceptable. I mean, we could destroy the genome of our children. This is the bit I'm trying to flag, and I'll not stop until they listen. And the one thing, as I said, I'm at the stage where all the people who've had the vaccine in Australia, if you've had it, I don't really care. What I'm caring about is your children and their children. And they're the people that we're fighting to stop this nonsense. It is absolutely outrageous, and we just have to get rid of it now and forever. I don't think you're ever going to be able to stabilize the messenger RNA technology. And just one last thing, this is so insidious that Australia and Britain have signed up with Moderna hundreds of millions of pounds to build big useless facilities to churn these out for anything that comes. No, you don't want. Actually, it's opened my eyes. There are so many vaccines now, we need a big review. Just how many are important in Western society? I actually believe we should cull the whole vaccine program after seeing this. And this effort to industrialize vaccines to make everybody money from the WHO, from everybody else, Fauci, Gates, and the big pharma downwards. No, they've exposed it for what it is, and we should now be very, very careful at any vaccine that has been licensed, whether we really need it.
So, John, I agree absolutely with every word Angus has said. And just to add to that, these vaccines are ineffective. The Cleveland Clinic has shown that the more boosters you get, the greater the risk of getting COVID. So you unpack that. You're being vaccinated against the disease. The vaccine is increasing your risk of getting the disease you're trying to prevent. It's a completely ineffective vaccine. So not only is it phenomenally dangerous, the spike protein is probably the single most toxic protein known to mankind. There's no disease that it cannot cause. And as Angus said, because of molecular mimicry, the number of autoimmune diseases caused by the spike protein is endless. And so not only is it not safe, it's ineffective. It's a complete and utter ruse.
Thank you, Paul, so much for that, because what we have both just said is for the TGA to even try and defend this shows they're not fit for purpose, and they should be ripped up and some other kind of protector person put in their place. I believe the regulators have become unbelievably complacent because of this. And we all know who funds them, Big Pharma, and we all know that the revolving door is just complete. I mean, it's just they're not fit for purpose, and the governments have to completely, I believe, remove all the regulatory authorities, including the FDA. We know the amount of felony that's been going on with the FDA and Big Pharma is just unbelievable. We know that from the big fines that they've all had. Now is the time. We cannot accept this because it's now got the potential to damage our children. And up with that, I will not put, as Winston used to say.
Let me bring Philip Altman into the mix now, because we've been really talking about the FDA, TGA, and you've been listening to a lot of this, Philip. Thanks for your patience. Fire away, my friend.
I agree 100% with what's been said. I've worked with the TGA here in Australia for more than 4 decades. And I can tell you from my experience, any drug that had 1/10 of 1% of the reported safety issues related to a product would have been withdrawn. 1/10 of 1%. The TGA here, I've lost complete confidence in them. They have a proven track record of providing misleading information. And this latest bit of information, this critique of David's work, is just the latest example. You remember they misled us about how effective the vaccines were, how it prevented transmission and infection. They told us it stayed at the injection site. They told us a lot of misinformation, and this is just the latest bit, and it is so important. The consequences for humanity are enormous and cannot be overstated. This needs an independent analysis, an independent look, and the hand waving away by the TGA is just doesn't get it.
Look, and we can come back and unpack a little bit more of this. We know that Gus Dalgleish has to leave us in a couple of minutes' time. Gus, linked into all of this mess that we're in, certain phraseologies have emerged in the narrative, and one of those is turbo cancer. Turbo cancer has been described by Wikipedia as a conspiracy theory. You are one of the foremost oncologists in the world. You have taught some of the great oncologists of the world. I want you briefly to tell us, does turbo cancer exist? What does it look like? And how many of your colleagues are seeing the same data that you are?
First of all, lots of my colleagues have seen this, especially surgeons. A young surgeon has just sent me his recent experience and thoughts on this only today. And he is basically saying we're just seeing an explosion of cancers that are presenting. Of course, they've always been there, but they're presenting at stage 3 and 4, like colorectal, not at 1 and 2. They're presenting in people in their 30s and 40s, not in 60s and 70s. And it's becoming very resistant to treatment. I myself have had 3 good friends with turbo cancers, all which occurred after the booster vaccine. It's absolutely described. I've witnessed my own eyes with my friends. 2 of them are now dead. The other is basically just holding on in there. They all, and this is absolutely the case, all 3 of them had the boosters purely so they could go to family events abroad because of the draconian requirement to have a booster vaccine in order to travel. And 2 of them are now dead. Now, one of them is in my specialty, melanoma. He had a tiny little melanoma years ago, and he suddenly presents with metastases everywhere. He had bone metastases all down his spine, in his pelvis, everywhere else. He was completely resistant to the standard treatment now, which induces static disease in at least 90% of people, and responses is 70%. This is, and then he was dead in no time. This is what I mean by turbo cancer. And yes, everybody has seen this.
So people are saying that most people know somebody who's died suddenly of cancer that just came, they were diagnosed within weeks, they're dead. That's what you're talking about.
Absolutely. And you just remind me that in my other diaspora of friends, where we meet up, say, once a year or so, that in one of these groups, I was horrified to find that 3 people had died suddenly of 2 of pancreatic cancer and 1 of mesothelioma in the year since we saw them when they were completely healthy. And yes, they'd all had unnecessary boosters. Boosted by the NHS is bullying. It bullies me. I'm getting absolutely furious that I must have a booster when I have told them my views on it. I think they're criminal. I think the people running the NHS putting all the resources into getting people to have useless vaccines that basically is going to kill them. If it doesn't kill them with cancer, it's going to kill them with stroke and cardiac conditions, is beyond the pale. What has gone on with the people governing us? It's like they've all been infected with a dementia virus. So anyway, that's so it's, and I've got no respect for Wikipedia ever since they got facts about me totally wrong, and they don't seem to be particularly interested in correcting facts. I basically think Wikipedia is absolutely a worthless thing. I wouldn't give it the time of day at all. And it's just they've proved my point by saying that turbo cancer is a conspiracy theory. Well, let's get rid of Wikipedia too. It's way past its sell-by date. At any rate, I must go now. So thank you very much indeed for having me on, and to everybody, it's been it's been really great to see you, and especially to meet David for the first time, Paul, who I've spent a lot of time with, and John in New Zealand, and Dan and yourself. It's actually been wonderful. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Professor Angus Dalgleish. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to get you back on again soon. Thanks for joining.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Bye.
Right, we continue now as we need to, because this is really important. And before we go back to the rest of our panel, John, you are an elected representative in the Snowy Valley Shire Council. Councillor Adrian McRae is an elected representative, a councillor in the Port Hedland Shire Council. And he has come out. You have come out several times, and not only on this program, but within your own organisation. Speaking for other councillors, other elected representatives, we have said all along that it beholds any elected representative in any organisation or level of government, if they see something is wrong, to speak up. How do you feel about that? And what advice would you give to councillors who will be reviewing this video and who will be receiving that document from David Speicher and others?
Well, look, Hoodie, I think we could get really mad about it, but look, that I suppose doesn't really achieve anything. I think what we need to say here is that there are enough expert people around the world, like the clinicians and experts that we've got gathered on our panel today, to say to mums and dads out there and to bureaucrats that have got the blinkers on, there are red flags. There are red flags here that need to be looked at. And look, I know these GPs, these doctors go to work and they work long hours, and they obviously don't have a lot of time to do their own research on these things, but surely they must be seeing an explosion of issues going on. And I think it's fouled by the problem in our country, in Australia. AHPRA, the regulator of health professionals, has really pushed heavily against doctors, nurses, paramedics, physios, anyone, pharmacists speaking out about the vaccines. And it's made it very difficult for people to pop their heads up and say, I'm not happy about this, because unfortunately, Hoodie, having an aviation background like you, I think medicine is way behind where aviation was 30 years ago in the cockpit. You know, we've got this situation where we've got these mavericks going around at the TGA and other places that are basically spoiling the party for everyone, and they're careering towards a cliff, and they don't even know it. It's a very sad situation. But so what we need them to do is just take note and just ask questions and make those grassroots inquiries about getting something happening independently to at least look at what's going on, so that we can do some analysis. But look, the real problem is these mRNA vaccines. We've heard the experts, Hoodie. They don't serve any purpose. They're not doing anything. So why take them? What's the risk-benefit analysis? I know you said very early on in the piece, if the chief pilot said to you, we're going to run your 737 with a new experimental fuel, would you fly the aeroplane? And you said, no, you wouldn't. So why would you want this being injected into yourself when it's got absolutely no benefit at all? None at all. You've heard the experts. So why take it? So what you need to do is activate at the grassroots level. Councillors need to put this up at their next council meeting, and at the very minimum have a discussion about it and support the motion of Port Hedland in essentially doing the same thing that they've done. And I know that councils have received all that information. So just act on it. Just ask questions. That's all we need to do.
And John, before I go to the rest of our panel, is it within your remit as an elected representative of your local Shire Council to be concerned about health in the Shire?
Look, different councils, Hoodie, have different remits. Look, in South Australia, I understand they're responsible for vaccination programs. But look, health is the remit of every local government area. It's the remit of everyone in a position of responsibility to ask questions about health and safety. It doesn't matter whether you're just walking down the footpath and you see a crack in the pavement, you should do something about it. This is no different. So the councils are responsible, even if they're just checking food preparation in their daily activities, occupational health and safety activities. So they are on local health advisory committees. They are so invested in health. They work cooperatively, especially in regional areas of Australia, to assist in providing programs and health outcomes, better health outcomes for all Australians. So they need to get involved at this level, and it's very important that they do. They meddle in it everywhere else, so there's no reason why they can't meddle in it here.
Now, John, the former Health Minister of WA and now the current Premier of WA, Roger Cook, came out and said that all councillors should go back to their knitting. Just briefly, yes or no? Are you a good knitter?
No.
No, thank you for that. Okay, gentlemen. Now, the one big elephant in the room that we're all ignoring is that while all this debate's going on, people are becoming injured, people are dying. Now, I've got to tell you that over the weekend, the Hoodies Heroes group in the Northern Rivers area were very concerned about a young woman who has been severely vaccine injured and gaslit to the point that she has been suicidal. And she went missing over the weekend, and a great effort was mounted by some incredible people to locate her and look after her. She is in this mental state because she has been severely injured as a result of extreme vomiting that she's been having most of her time since her vaccine. All her teeth are rotten, and people are looking at her and calling her a drug addict. She's got rotten teeth because she's doing cocaine and all that sort of stuff. We are hearing these stories every single day. We have interviewed so many, I think hundreds of vaccine injured, and there are organisations out there who are speaking up. They're not only vaccine injured from the mRNA, they're vaccine injured from a whole bunch of other vaccines. And we've also been highlighting the case of infected bloods. In the last 30 or 40 years in Australia and around the world, infected bloods have been given to haemophiliacs and others, which have given them AIDS and Hep C, and it's destroyed their lives, and nothing gets done. We have to start looking at these things. Let me ask, David, is there anything you want to contribute to that? And firstly, before you do, I just want to tell you how incredibly brave you are. I mean, not only are you speaking out, but what you're dealing with, the impediment that you have, it must frustrate the daylights out of you. And the fact that you push through it and put so much energy into it is just inspiring, my friend.
Thanks. It is tough. It's tough to see lots of my peers out there did this guts saying my work, and I'm so thankful to those like your just self who actually talk with me about my own work. So I am open to talk with whoever about the science. Now the more we look at these vaccines, these gene therapies, the more ways in which we see they are causing harm. So spike is toxic, lipid and the nanoparticles are toxic. There's high amounts of DNA in there, the whole SV40 N1 methyl pseudouridine causes, it says, ribosomal frame shifting. There's double branded RNA. There's DNA, RNA hybrids in there. And each of these ways have a possible way of causing harm in a different way. Two of my friends are severely vaccine injured. One, Michael has had 2 shots, can't even walk, and St. Joe's Healthcare here looked at him and said there's nothing they can find wrong. It's either psychological or neurological, and our governments aren't even doing the right funding for the science. They won't admit there's a whole chunk of vaccine injured out there, and we need the right funding to do the science to help these people have the right tests to get the help and treatment they need. And so it's my heart to help those in need. So there's no good spike antigen test out there. I'm working on one, but our own governments who have force vaxxed so many people and made people choose a job versus a shot. It's like, if you don't get it, you don't work. These people need to admit fault and admit that they've caused people harm and do what they can to help those who have been harmed.
Absolutely. What do you think, Paul Marik? What do you think? You're seeing vaccine injuries?
So I agree with David 100%. So as I said before, the CDC's own data tells us that there are at least 18 million vaccine injured people in this country, and that's probably an underestimate. These people are gaslit. It's a disease that's not recognized. It's a disease that's not being studied. It's a disease that's not being compensated. We know out of these so-called 18 million, according to the Vaccine Compensation Fund, 17 have received compensation. And these are patients who've either had an anaphylactic reaction or myocarditis. So these people are basically left to their own resources. They have no financial support. They have no medical support. They have no emotional support. They basically signed up for the vaccine, in goodwill, thinking that they were doing the right thing, and were harmed. They were misled. It's a complete and utter travesty. And I think as a society, we need to study this disease. We need to recognize this disease. We need to compensate those that have been injured. And, the tragedy, as Gus has said, is that we vaccinated children. Children are at an exceedingly low risk of dying from COVID, particularly with Omicron. The risk is infinitesimally small. In fact, a healthy child has almost a 0% chance of dying of COVID. The data shows that children are more likely to drown in the bathtub than to die of COVID. So if the FDA was doing their duty, they would ban bathtubs rather than forcing children to be vaccinated, because it does no good. The other thing I wanted to say is one of the biggest problems, and David spoke to this, is censorship. Once you censor science, you decapitate science. We need to be able to talk to each other. We need to be able to exchange information with each other. We may not be right, but that doesn't matter. This is the basis of science. It's always been the basis, is that we exchange information. We're not always right, but it's a process of self-improvement. It self-corrects itself. So by censoring the voices that they don't want to hear, basically it's stopped all dialogue and it's stopped progress. So we need to stop the censorship. We need scientists to be able to exchange information freely. And that way we can move forward.
Absolutely. Sorry, John, go.
I was just going to ask Philip, I mean, given that the emphasis on this program has really been about the advanced testing and evidence that we've been able to find out and now expose, why is, I mean, Paul talked there about 18 million people that have been vaccinated in America alone. I mean, how many have died? I mean, surely there's got to be testing available to do autopsies, but they're just not doing them.
No, they're resisting autopsies because autopsies will reveal the true answer. The vaccine compensation scheme for the COVID vaccines in Australia has ended now. There have been 1,000 reported deaths linked to the COVID vaccines in Australia alone. When you consider the underreporting factor, which the TGA itself acknowledges is probably in excess of 10 times, it's probably between 40 and 100 times. We're looking at not 1,000 deaths linked, but maybe 100,000. And yet the TGA, as of right now, only admits to, the last time I looked, about 14 deaths linked to the vaccines. That is misinformation. What we need is transparency. We need to see the record level data to be independently analyzed. We need a royal commission. The government here in Australia promised a royal commission before they came into power, and now they're refusing to do it. This is one of the most important, consequential things in our history, and yet our government has failed us. This latest information from David is just the last bit of information in a long, long line of information that we all know about, that's been revealed over the last 4 years. And unfortunately, I have no confidence in our TGA. I have no confidence in our government to reveal the truth. And this is so important to uncover. So I thank people like David who have been so brave and have come forward.
Absolutely.
And revealed this data. And it needs to be taken very seriously. The hand waving of the TGA must cease. And we need to get more and more people behind this information to reveal the truth.
Philip, there's been some wonderful articles written by Rebecca Barnett, who we interviewed on this program just a few days ago. She does her homework. She's very cautious about stating anything unless it's thoroughly proven. You've been across the last couple of articles she's written. She's written an article particularly examining the very rapid debunking by the TGA of Dr. David Speicher's research. Enlighten us a little bit of what you know about that, because you know the TGA, you know them very, very well, and you've read the article and you know what David has presented. Give us a summary of that.
I am absolutely convinced that the objections that the TGA has put forward are without foundation. But the way to prove that is to have a dialogue. That's how science works. Let's have a debate. The TGA is using the misinformation word to cover their backsides. Now, this is the problem, because in Australia, as in other places, we're currently considering the misinformation and disinformation bill. And if that gets across the line, it's very serious, because the TGA can just hand wave away the detailed science that David has put out and just classify it as misinformation. And that would be the end of the story. That can happen. We can't allow that to happen.
It staggers me that all the research supporting the mRNA vaccines, when it's obtained under freedom of information, appears to be redacted in most part. So it leads one to believe that something is being hidden. Paul Marik, the speed at which research is debunked is frightening, and it should indicate to everybody that there is a massive degree of protection going on. One of the crazy statements I've heard in the last year was when AstraZeneca withdrew their vaccine from the market. Our own health minister, Mark Butler, came out in a press conference and said he wanted to thank AstraZeneca because they have saved 65 million lives around the world with their vaccine. Have any of you seen any data supporting 65 million saved from AstraZeneca?
No, not at all. That claim, I've heard the claim of 20 million lives. When you look how that claim is supported, it's supported by modeling. So they've assumed in their model that the vaccine is highly effective and that COVID-19 is much more deadly than it really is. And when you put that information into a model, you come out with 20 million. There's no evidence that these vaccines have saved net lives. I've never seen it.
Yeah, I must agree with Philip. I think it's an overstatement that the vaccines have saved millions of lives. I think on balance, more patients have died from the vaccine than have possibly been saved. And so this, as Philip said, this is derived from modeling experiments, not from actual patient-level data. And patient-level data does not support this notion that it saved millions of lives. That's just complete misinformation.
David Speicher, you've seen what's in this stuff. Does it save lives?
But it's so ironic that if you do something which helps, use ivermectin or even Nick Prof Kike's own vaccine. If it helps and it's not killing folk, it's being demonized. The whole thing on ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine win vitamin D. These whole mRNA vaccines, which have billions of dollars behind them, are being pushed because the elites are making billions off of it. You just have to follow the cash. As for Rebecca Barnon and that's latest report, which came out the hours ago, I am so thankful for that. In our response to the TGA, Rebecca helped lead that charge, and then scientists like myself, Kevin McKernan, and Jessica Rose ensured all of her science was right. It's there. It's solid, and so it's a nice, long, in-depth rebuttal of a weak TGA argument. Are these vaccines safe? No. Are they effective at causing harm? Yes, but I don't think that they should be on the market, and they must be pulled ASAP.
Well, and you're looking at this stuff, and I know you're a family man because we've seen your children wandering around in the background, and it's just we have to look at the elephant in the room, and that's what Port Hedland is all about, isn't it? Gentlemen, John and the rest of the panel, we could talk for hours. Is there anything we need to touch on before we go? Let me start with you, Philip.
Well, look, this is so important, so consequential for the world, for humanity. This has to be taken very, very seriously. The problem here is basically that the burden of proof of safety has been shifted. In the beginning, the burden of proof was on the manufacturers to prove safety. Now, safety is more or less assumed because the regulators aren't looking for proof of safety. You can't find a problem if you don't look for it. And the onus of proof of lack of safety is falling on people like David. And it shouldn't be there. It should be on the regulator. That's their job. They used to do a good job. I knew them. They were excellent at what they used to do. And now I've lost confidence. This is so important. It must be addressed.
Professor Marik.
So I think this initiative in this single city in Australia may have consequential results. Hopefully it can spread to all the city councils in Australia, and that they will seriously consider the information presented. That you shouldn't dismiss it out of hand. And hopefully it will increase the level of awareness. And then, it should spread across the world. We need people to open their eyes because they've been misled. These gene therapies are neither safe and effective. We've been misled. And I think this needs to be a grassroots level, which seems to be happening in Australia. Maybe Australia can lead the way for the rest of the world. So, what these councillors have done, I think is admirable. It's an astonishingly positive move because it's a ground roots level. Hopefully this can spread across Australia and across the world. And that is our hope, because our goal is to help people. There are so many people, as you know, that have been suffered and have been injured, that this needs to stop. We need the truth, and we need people to have open discussions and to talk about this. So hopefully this initiative will gather momentum. And, our deepest gratitude to the city council that's involved.
Absolutely. And we'll give a comment to you now, David. Anything that you would like to add?
Well, I'm so thankful to Mimic. Right. And those councils, they have courage and guts to take this and stand up and do what's right. I've been in talks this past week with the New Zealand folk and Canadians, and this sort of grassroots council level work is starting there too. And so hopefully if things start at the grass roots up, and that a scientific debate level that will gain some traction on this. There's been so much evidence shown over the past 4 years, and it's piled up. And it's time that our governments and the regulatory bodies wake up and do what is right. So,
well, so well said, and it's succinct as well. I mean, it just comes down to doing what's right. Johnny Larder.
Well, look, Hoodie, I think it just comes back to common sense so that people can ask questions. I mean, if this was a Qantas aeroplane on a ramp and the flight engineer or the engineer were downstairs saying, I'm concerned about an issue on this aeroplane, it wouldn't be allowed to depart.
No.
I mean, this is the reality here. I mean, we're in a situation where we shouldn't, the motto, first do no harm. I mean, we've heard numerous experts say there is no benefit to having these vaccines in their current format for anything. There's no risk to the public. So why have it? Why put yourself at risk? And I think people just need to ask questions. I mean, there are so many red flags here. There's so many increases in different diseases. People are suffering different injuries and they don't know why. But there's only one common denominator here. People are dying, people are being injured, and people are having these terrible diseases impacted upon them from the vaccine. There is no doubt about it. That may be alarming to some people and it may be confronting, but that's what is happening. That is the only thing that has changed. And until people start asking questions about all these influences that are going on, you don't have to look too far, Hoodie. I mean, 96% of the funding to the Therapeutic Goods Association in Australia is from big pharmaceutical companies, 96%. These people have got their grubby paw prints all over everything, and you don't have to look too far. If it was a murder investigation, it would be over in about 24 hours. But here we are 4 years on, and people are still not awake to what's happening. Well, maybe this Port Hedland stuff might be the catalyst to people having a look at what is going on.
Well, John, you've just been guilty of spreading misinformation. As Rebecca Barnett said the other day, she published an article saying that 95% of funding of the TGA was from big pharmaceutical, and the TGA rebuked that. They said, no, it was 94%. So in the interest of giving the correct information, I had to correct you there, John, but...
You'll be corrected, Hoodie. That's the difference.
Even they admitted that it's 94%, which is the highest level of big pharmaceutical funding of any regulatory body in the world, Australia's own TGA. Well, there we go. So we're in a situation where we're presenting you facts, and we're hoping that a great many councillors will be watching this. There is a responsibility that goes with office, no matter how minuscule you think that is. Many of you will think that, no, all I'm in charge of is garbage collection and maintaining footpaths. Well, no, you have a greater responsibility. The people who care about your initiatives and the work that you do for them in representing them in their local shire are wanting you to represent them thoroughly. And you can do that by examining all the facts on both sides. The ball is in your court. How will history remember you? Because we are on the cusp of the most monumental event in global history. We are. And it will remember you one way or another. How would you like to be remembered? I know for me, it's there's no way. If the engineer, as John said on the ground, said to me before I was pushing back to start engines that I'm not happy with something, I would immediately stop the pushback and shut everything down and get this thoroughly investigated before it went anywhere. Why? Because it's my moral obligation. It's my responsibility to do that as a captain of an aeroplane. It's your responsibility as a doctor to do the same. It's your responsibility as a scientist or a legislator or a councillor to do the same. It's your responsibility as an authority to do the same, because history will record your action or inaction in ways that you may regret later on. For media outlets out there who will be reporting on the aspects of what's going on in Port Hedland, we pray that you do your job diligently. We pray that you push time constraints aside and editors' comments aside and do your research. I know it's hard for you because there's no time to do stuff. And even Gary Adshead from 6PR said, I don't have the time to continue this argument with you, David Speicher, which is indicative. If you haven't got the time to do the research or back up what you've said, don't make the comment. Don't make the comment. It's customary that we pray at the end of these programs. So, gentlemen, if you would indulge me. Dear Lord, Father in heaven, we seek truth. We know that truth sets us free because you've told us it does. And Lord, we pray for all of those regulators and those elected representatives who are viewing this today, that they will just put prejudices aside, examine what's before them, and know that they may be culpable in one stage of their life in the future, and that they need to know what they're talking about and know what they're rebuking. And so, Father God, we pray that you guide and lead their thoughts in every way and their research in Jesus' name. Amen. I want to thank you on behalf of all of our audience, David Speicher. I don't need to go on any more about it. You're an incredibly brave man. You put so much energy into this. You've forced your way through incredible barriers to get your message across. And I want you to know that your message was heard very succinctly. And I want to have you back on. I'd love to get you back on with another panel. I'm sure this isn't over yet. To those of you, before I go to Paul and Philip, To those of you who are hearing a lot of things about Adrian McRae, you need to examine all that through a very different frame. This man will be discredited at every turn. At the moment, he's returning from Europe. He'll be arriving back in Australia soon, and he will be the brunt of some incredible attack. And I can tell you that that attack is coming from people who are worried about the truth that he's sharing. So get behind Adrian McRae, stand with Adrian McRae, examine the facts for yourself before you jump to any conclusions. To those of you who are about to comment on this post, be gentle, be kind, and ask yourself this question. If there's any chance that anything you've heard tonight might be right, would you want to know about it? If there's any chance that you have been given a substance that is going to affect your health and your outcomes and that of your family, would you want scientists to be working on a cure for this? Because the fact is, Dr. Paul Marik has referred to the vaccine injury as a disease. We are talking about the cure becoming the disease. I can't believe you said that, Paul. I know where you were coming from, but we're talking about vaccine injury as a new disease. The cure has become the disease, and that requires all of us to take stock. Dr. Paul Marik, you have sacrificed so much in the cause of truth. I know this because I had the privilege of spending a week with you. I've got photographs of you and my wife, Michelle, doing the washing up in New Zealand after we cooked a meal together. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you and Angus Dalgleish in that time in New Zealand. I know where your heart is. And I know that many doctors have told me that they know your name because you are one of the best critical care specialists in the world. And they acknowledge that, even those who may not agree. So we thank you for coming on. Dr. Philip Altman, courageous to the last. Your Substacks keep bringing out truth after truth. You examine everything carefully. You're always free to give your time to us. And you are working for the benefit of all Australians, and not only all Australians, for all human beings. And we thank you so much for being part of that as well.
You're welcome.
So thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Rudy. And just want to thank you for what you're doing. You are an example of a great leader and a great gentleman and a great person. So I just want to thank you. We love you. Thank you.
You know, there's an upside to COVID. And that upside is meeting guys like you. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. The honor's all ours, Johnny.
100%. 100%.
100%. And we carry on, we go on, we don't stop. We've got to keep going. We're obliged to. Whether we're elected or not, we have to do what's right. At the end of the day, that's what it all comes down to. So God bless you all. Johnny, you've often been heard to say,
you just couldn't make this stuff up.
You just couldn't make this stuff up. Stay out of the trees, everyone. And don't forget, if you love somebody and you haven't told them, please tell them. Now's the time. We don't want to have crews of people looking for people who've disappeared and we're worried about them as we have over the weekend. God bless you all, and spread this far and wide. This needs to be seen everywhere. To all you regulators, to all of you elected representatives, you know what you need to do. Do the right thing, examine it, and let's get this out on the table. God bless you all, and from Club Grubbery, bye for now.